So we are looking at our next topic, and I want to ask the following questions to my professors and see the responses that come. So, Prof. Charles, when you go to school um, and you need something from home, how do you do it? Prof, you can unmute and submit to us. Prof. Charles, are you there? Okay, let me speak to Delad. Prof. Delad, if you get to school, how do you get things? Okay, I think Charles typed in the chat. I don't know if your microphones. Okay, my background is noisy. Okay, okay. So Charles says he calls his parents. Okay, that's fine. Prof. Deladem, what do you do in your case?
Yes, please, I call him.
You also call, so you use the mobile phone. Okay. Prof. Cyril.
So please, I also call.
Okay, then I'm sure Adam would also say he calls, right? Okay, now I want you to take us through when you call. The intention is that you want to pass on some message or information, right? Now, if it is about chop money and you call home, what is your expectation when you get to your father to tell him that, oh, daddy, I think I need 100 cedis? Or immediately you tell him that I need 100 cedis. That is it. You don't expect him to say anything. I just want to know that. Do you expect him to say something, or by the mere fact that you have said, daddy, I need 100 cedis, that is okay for you? So let me hear from Adam.
So he'd ask what I'm going to use.
Okay, he asks what you are going to use it for, and then if you tell him eventually, what happens next?
He asks when he should send it.
He asks about how much?
When he should send it.
When he should send it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think I'll take the reaction and then make a point out of it. So, professors, you see that when you get to school, you pick up a phone, you want to pass on a message to your parent. Now, if it's about chop money and you call, and for instance, nobody picks up the call, what it simply means is that they will not get the message you are trying to pass on. And for that matter, your chop money would never get to you. In another case, you could call, they'll receive the call, you talk, but immediately you say, okay, so daddy, I need 100 cedis. The call drops. And so you don't get any reaction, or should I say response, from your parent. At that point, you would feel that, well, my message did not go on well because your father didn't respond as to whether he was going to send the money or not. Now, I want you to picture this as a scenario or a process where you pass on a message to your father. So you passing on the message to your father. And it doesn't end there. You expect your father to provide a response. Then you can satisfy yourself that whatever purpose for which you took the phone to call them would be achieved or would be fulfilled. Professors, this process is what we term or what we call communication. Communication. So, like I indicated to you, today our topic will be communication in business. Communication in business. What I demonstrated to you is the communication we have been doing with our family members, right? So communication in businesses. So based on the scenario that I elaborated, can you define communication in your own terms? Communication. Who would give it a try? Well, if you find a very interesting student, he will tell you communication is where when I go to school, I pick a phone and call my father that I need money. As funny as it sounds, some students really use the examples that we use to help them get the concept in their final term papers, right? But I'm sure you'll not do that. So in your own terms, what is communication based on the scenario that I gave? Do I need to call? Okay, Charles is off because of noisy background. Let me call Prof. Prof. Della. Prof. Della.
And I think communication is just the transfer of information from the sender to the receiver, and then we are expecting to reach a common understanding.
Okay, so that is the gospel according to Prof. Della. Thank you. Prof. Cyril, you want to say something in that regard? Communication.
Okay, so communication, it refers to the process of sharing information between people within and outside the organization to achieve a common goal.
Okay. So what is common in the definitions you've all stated is that it is a transfer of information, right, from one source to another with the intention of, creating a common understanding between them. However, there is that bit where you need the second source to respond to the first source. So let's define communication. So communication is the transfer. I think you write this. I'll type it on the page. So communication is the transfer of information. The transfer of information okay, so I'm typing it here. Communication is the transfer of information from a sender to a receiver. With the aim of creating a common understanding between them. Okay, so that's communication for you. So it's a process of sending or transferring information from one source to the other. Now, the person who sends it is the person who initiates the process is the sender, and the one who receives it is the receiver. Now, in the scenario I gave, you would reckon that communication would only be effective or it will make sense only when the second source, in this case the receiver, provides a response or a feedback. Please note that point down carefully, that communication is complete. Communication is complete when there is feedback. When there is feedback from the receiver. So note this key term, feedback. So for example, if I see you and I say, hello, now, I'm not sure you respond to this. So that will not be effective communication, or that will not be a complete communication, because the sender doesn't even know what, or sorry, the receiver doesn't even know what the sender is saying or blabbing about. Okay. So communication is complete when there is feedback from the receiver. So in the example I gave, if you call your father and your father does not give you a feedback or give you a response as to when and how much he's going to send, I'm sure you will not be happy about the common understanding you wanted to create between yourself and your father, which is for him to send you some 100 cedis as shop money, right? So that's communication. Or example, you ask a friend to buy you a shoe when coming back from the vacation, and then probably you wrote a letter. If your friend does not write back, how would you even know that he has gotten your message, right? So feedback is a key stage in the communication process. Okay. So professors, in businesses, as you see, there's a lot of exchange of information. The accountant is speaking to the laborer. The manager is asking the production manager to do this. So there's always information exchange, right, between one person and the other, or one group and another. So that's what we are going to look at. Now, in the father chop money scenario, most of you were using the phone, but for me, if I needed something from home, I would have to take Eziat and go home. I don't have to call. I take Eziat and go home and pick whatever amount or items that will be giving me. Some people would not call, they would only have to alert their housemaster or whoever is taking care of them in the school. The person will reach out to the parent, then whatever he or she wants is delivered. Okay. So that is to say there are several ways you can go about this. So you can either use the phone, you can use a letter, or you can go home directly to get these things done, right? So, however, let's appreciate the communication process or the steps in communication. So the communication process or the steps in communication. Now, before you or let me say, how do you start with regards to you want chop money, right? How do you start the communication? I really want us to make this discussion, one that is involving, right? That's why I'm pestering you with these kind of questions. So bear with me. Okay. Oh, I think I've lost Professor's slide. Let's move and record it. So Prof. Charles and Prof. Eden, you see, you want chop money. You have a problem as you need money. How do you communicate to your parents about this? How do you do it? As in, how do you just pick a phone and call, or do you just how? I want to understand the thought processes you go through before you are able to tell your father or your mother that I need money. I think Adam, let me hear you on this
Okay, so first, I probably get a phone. Yeah,
Okay.
So after then, um, yeah. So I dial the number and call them.
Okay. Okay. So the reason why I'm asking that question is you will not just get up and say, I'm going to call my father for money, right? It begins with the idea. So you conceive an idea that, hey, my chop box is empty, my pocket is empty, so I will need money, right? So you start by conceiving an idea. So the first step in communication process, the first step in the communication process is conception of an idea. As in something comes to mind. And in our scenario, what comes to mind is that you want chop money. So the first step in the communication process is conception of ideas. So you conceive the idea. And this is what starts the communication process. So this is where you begin to think, oh, yesterday I couldn't even buy a pen. Okay, so I think I need money. So that's the conception of the idea. Okay. The second stage is encoding the idea. You encode the idea. And I don't know if any of my professors here would assist us with the term encode. Encode. I think, Adam, you are the only option I have now. So sorry, I'll be worrying you so much. But to encode means what?
Okay. So to encode is putting information on a certain kind of
Oh, I think the network, we are
based on
struggling.
network.
We are struggling to hear Prof. Adam. Okay, so the encoding simply means that you are now trying to convert the idea you have in your head in a format where you can transfer it, right? So you have an idea that you need a chop money. How do you convert this idea into a format that can be transmitted to your father? Okay, so are you going to write a letter? So the part of you writing the letter, you are encoding, right? Are you going to do it via voice call? If yes, how are you going to do it? Are you going to speak harshly or softly? That is part of the encoding. So the encoding is you converting the idea into a format that can be transmitted. If it's a text message, right, then you type in the letters, okay, to form that complete sentence will form part of the encoding. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so if you are using the written style, you want to write a letter to your father, then you'll be using some symbols or maybe some words, right? So as you sit down and type hello, HELLO, comma, you are doing encoding. You are trying to convert the idea you have in your head in a format that can be transferred to another person. Of course, if you have something in your head, nobody will know unless you find a way to put it in a format that we can see and appreciate. Okay, so that is the encoding bit. Even the language, are you going to use ever, French, whatever? So encoding here means converting, right? Converting the idea into a format. Let me write it. So converting a conceived idea into a format that is transferable. Okay. Transferable and understood by the intended receiver or recipient. Okay. So if you are going to speak to, excuse my language, or excuse me, pardon me to use this, if you are going to speak to somebody who is blind, then you need to really convert your idea in a format that you can transfer this idea to this blind person, right? Okay, so that's encoding, the second process in the communication process. Please, any question so far? Okay, let's go to 3. The third process is selection of a suitable medium and transmission of message. So selection of a suitable medium and transmission of the message. Okay. So what do you do at this point? So you want to, what do you call it? Get chop money from your father. So you have that idea. You try to encode it by putting it in a text message. Now, when you put it in the text message, how are you going to get it to him? Is it through a WhatsApp or the normal text messaging, or maybe you call and read it out to him? So the medium refers to the appropriate avenue through which you get the information to your father. Okay, the appropriate avenue through which you get the information to your father. So is it through mobile phone? Is it through a letter, right? Is it through maybe a bus transport? That is the avenue or the medium through which you are doing the transmission of the information or message. And that is the third point. The fourth point, is reception and decoding of message. So this one is done by the receiver, right? So he or she receives and decode. So you see the sender encoded, now the receiver would have to what? Decode. Okay. So what does the sender really do by decoding the message? Of course, when you receive a letter from a different school, what do? You open it up, and as you read, you try to make meaning of what has been written. There are times certain symbols and, shorthand kind of writings are used, but then you are able to break it down to make meaning out of whatever you are seeing. And that is the decoding process, okay? The decoding process. So the decoding means you are breaking the information down, okay, so that you can understand exactly what the sender is trying to tell you. Okay. And the next point, after the receiver has done the decoding, the next thing will be to obtain feedback from the recipient. So obtain feedback from the recipient, or better still, feedback from the recipient. So you see, if your decoding was really done well, then you should be able to provide a feedback to the sender as to what information he or she is passing on to you. So it is at this feedback level where communication becomes what? Complete. Because if you don't communicate the feedback, the sender will not know whether you appreciated the information he was sharing or not. So professors, this is the communication process, or the stages in the communication process. Let's continue our class in the second session. See you shortly. Please join with the second session details.